There's widgeon out there, some teal, there's a few shoveler.
So what are they mallards?
There's mallard down there, yeah.
Wicken Fen near Cambridge is thought to be the oldest nature reserve in the UK.
Back in the day we would get 100 or 200 individuals, now upwards of 1,000.
Over the last 2 decades, they doubled the size of the reserve, which is now home to 9,820 species, from microscopic insects to otters and red deer. But how have they done this?
Turn the valve on and let the water in.
By flooding the fields.
Probably the most important is the fact that in re-wetting the peat, the soil, that locks the carbon away. It locks the carbon that's already in the soil, it locks it back into the soil and prevents it disappearing into the atmosphere. That's the biggest benefit.
From turning farmlands to floodplains, they've reduced the greenhouse gas emissions here by 80%.
We're as hands-off as possible by introducing animals and by putting water back into the landscape which has formerly been drained. It allows Mother Nature to take its course and the wildlife comes back with it as well.
And what they're doing here seems to be working.
If you go to the left, you can just see a pair of gadwall with their heads down feeding.
This year saw the first pair of breeding cranes here in a century. This mosaic of wildlife landscapes is now one of the most prolific and diverse nature reserves in the country. Fiona Lambdin, BBC News.
It looks like any other normal car on the road, but there is one critical difference. So Jim, it's driving itself now.
It is indeed, yes, that's right. The car's in full control.
Just like humans, robotic cars need to practice driving too. And here's how they take their lessons. Well, this car has been driving itself around Milton Keynes for the last 3 weeks, and it's practicing traffic lights and roundabouts, very appropriate for Milton Keynes, because although they are quite easy for humans to navigate, they're much harder for computers to get the hang of. These tests come just days after a pedestrian was killed in America by a self-driving Uber car. That vehicle also had a safety driver. So Jim, safety is obviously a massive issue for people, particularly at the moment. How safe is this? You're a safety driver, what are you doing?
Okay, so you're absolutely right, safety is paramount. So my role is the same as a normal driver, to be very aware of my surroundings, see what's around, traffic's around me. I also, I'm looking further ahead than probably the normal driver. I'm also considering vehicles behind us, coming alongside us.
Milton Keynes is home to one of the biggest autonomous car projects in Britain. The long-term promise is less congestion and fewer road deaths. It looks dramatic, but this is how the big insurance companies are preparing for driverless cars, recreating accidents to judge who's responsible. And here's Volvo's effort, a robotic car for workers in Gothenburg. I drove it, or rather didn't drive it, last year. They're going to ask 100 ordinary people to commute in a car, but it's not an ordinary car, it's an autonomous car. And then they're going to tell those people they're actually free to do anything else instead, so perhaps they want to send an email. They've been talking about robot cars for decades, so when might they actually appear in showrooms?
These sort of features are likely to be out within the next sort of 5 to 10 years. In different situations, I think that probably the way the regulations are going, it'll be on motorways first.
So computers need a lot more driving lessons before there's an autonomous car outside your house. Richard Westcott, BBC News, Milton Keynes.